its techniques. So I'll share my screen, and so we've got 2 hours from 10 till 12, but I will do my best to ensure that we do not necessarily have to use up all the 2 hours. I want this to be very brief and precise, so it doesn't bore you, and then you can have a lot more time to ask me questions, and I can respond to them. Um, so my name is Parklins Fine Chuku. I am product designer, UX UI designer, but my keen focus is on UX. So I am currently senior UX designer at Hugo and Cart. Hugo and Cart is a design agency based in London, and I've been a designer for about 5 years now. So welcome, guys. I will take us through today on our class. So I'll share my screen briefly, and I just have three primary sections: an introduction part, a part where I talk about why all the benefits of UX research, and then I move into to talk about the difference between quantitative and qualitative research, and then finally I share what the common techniques are around those two types of research. Um, so again, welcome. I will share my screen. If in case you can't hear me, just signify or let me know. But in the meantime, you can mute so that it is easier for everyone to hear, to focus on what I'm saying and not be distracted. All right. So I will begin sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
How about now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So welcome again, guys. My name is Parklins. Um, Define Chiku. I'm a senior UX designer, and today we're going to talk primarily about user research and research techniques. So, brief introduction is around. I'll give a okay. So yeah, so there are three primary sections that I'm going to focus on today. One will be why we need user research. Second will be the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. And finally, we'll talk about the research techniques and methods. So, brief introduction: user research is the methodic study of target users. All of this has so many English jargon, but primarily, user research is that study that helps you understand the user needs, understand their pain points, understand their motivations. Primarily, it is that thing that helps you understand what the users do and why they do what they do. Basically, it's I will leave you to you can go and do more research and get there are different definitions, several definitions around user research, but primarily, ultimately, all of those definitions come down to a simple context for how user research primarily helps you understand the user need. So it is user research, research about the users, and research that helps you understand what those users need, what they are going through, their pain, their motivations, their excitements, that everything about them enough to help you make informed decisions about your design and improve your entire product generally. So why do we need to do user research? Why do we not just jump into a project and get going? So I know that some some designers or some of us who were graphic designers, maybe not graphic designers. So most of the time when we have a project, I know there's this kind of excitement with jumping to your design tool and start breaking pixels and shifting things and like that. But and there's this rush to just want to jump into things and begin to put out what is in your mind. And I know that some people may struggle for why user research is necessary, right? So I'm going to talk to us briefly about the importance of it and how valuable it is to take a pause before you jump into pixels and do some research before you then dive into doing all those pixels things. So primarily, like I said before, so that is a very long, the previous definition of user research that you saw was a very long definition. I then summarized it to this which is user research is how you get to know your users, is how you get to know your users, what they do, and understand why they do what they do, right? And this insight helps us to validate whatever hypothesis that we might have and help us and inform our design decisions for whatever it is we want to decide to do. And when we're considering, let's say, if to use this color for buttons, or if to use this font for the entire app experience and things like that. Knowledge and insight about what your users do, why they do what they do, what they need, why they need certain things would help you make certain decisions. So user research helps you understand the what about your user and the why for why the what exists in those users. So here I shared like an image that shows in a diagram the kind of questions that research can help us understand or help us answer. You would see that I have like a graph split into two primary sections: behavioral and behavioral and attitudinal, and quantitative and qualitative. So what that means is we have two primary user research types and fall into two major sections. One part of the user research is behavioral and the other part is attitudinal. Is it? So my point is, so this answers questions for what user research methods can help us do. It helps us understand the why and the what. Primarily, what and why is what the research helps us do, which makes sense across other sectors that are not just UX UI. Even in graphic design, when you have a project, you need to do some kind of you need to do some kind of research, if maybe brand research or customer research, to understand why certain things exist, what actually exists, and then why they exist and why they are the way they are, and things like that. So what are the benefits of conducting UX research? There are three primary benefits. There are a lot more of these benefits, but I try to summarize to just three. But one is that user research helps us build products that are relevant to the users. And this is like a no-brainer. The way we can build things that are relevant to the user is to understand what exactly it is that is relevant to these people, right? Imagine that I want a bottle of Coke, yeah? And then you keep selling me Coke, but I am always on the run and I always drink this Coke when I am on the go. Let's say I'm on a bus ride home and I want my Coke. I like drinking my Coke on the go and not in my house or when I'm seated. But you always try to sell me bottled Coke, and you keep selling me bottled Coke because you know I like Coke, but you always keep selling me bottled Coke. You do not understand enough of why I need Coke or how I like my Coke, right? But what if I like Coke because, as in, I take Coke. Why am I promoting Coke? Let's say I take a bottle of I drink Coke mostly, or I feel the need to drink Coke when I'm on the go. Let's say I'm on the bus, I'm driving from I'm driving from the mainland to the island, and there's a lot of sun, and I'm buying Coke, and I need to drink Coke, and then you're telling me you're only producing bottled Coke, right? But what if because of the I need plastic Cokes instead, and I always crave for plastic Coke because of the flexibility, and I wouldn't have to worry about hitting somebody or creating some kind of weapon around. But you always keep producing Coke, but the need for a plastic bottle is what I need more than the actual bottle. So you see that you're solving my need. I need Coke, yeah, but I need it in plastics and not in bottles. But imagine you only produce bottles, and then to you, you're solving my problem because you know I need Coke, but you do not know that I do not just need Coke, but I need plastic Coke. This is not like a firm analogy, but I'm trying to just bring things that are relatable in our real life, especially those who live in Lagos, to connect that to some kind of show the value of building things that are relevant to the users. And also when bringing it down to like product design, imagine spending time on features of spending time designing features, then engineering team develops it and ships it, and then the user never uses it at all. isn't that like a waste of infrastructure, development funds, time and resources of the team and the company going into a bunch of works, and you find out that the users do not eventually need those things. So user research is that thing that helps us build the things that are relevant to the users, because it is, when it comes to product design, we need to prioritize a lot because there's not enough time to implement all the features. That's why it's like an endless process of iterations, which is next 2 weeks or next month, you're going to still get an update to update your Instagram or to update your WhatsApp app, because the features that we'll keep implementing are endless. So there is a need for prioritization, right? So, but user research is what gets us there. It helps us build the things that are relevant, identify the things that are relevant, and then capture them in our product. Secondly, it helps us create products that are easy to use and enjoy. The only way you can create products that are easy to use and enjoy is by understanding what what ease means to the user. What does it mean to me to use something with ease? What does it mean to me to enjoy certain things? And the only way to get a good understanding of that is to understand what are the things that motivate me, what are the things that make me so annoyed and pained using a particular product. When you identify those pain points and solve for those pain points, you are able to cut down on the amount of pain I experience using your app, thereby making me feel ease and enjoy the process of using that app. Right? So user research is what gets us there. It's what helps us identify the things that are relevant to the users, the things that makes them understand how to use your product, how to use it with ease, or how to experience a good and beautiful, enjoyable experience using a particular product, right? That in its entirety is what user experience and building like a great user experience is. And user research is that very primary step in your discovery phase that helps you to get to the point where you build an overall great user experience for the user, right? And we all know that great user experience is crucial, is critical and crucial for like product successes, right? So user research is that thing that gets you there. So you can a product can be very nice and the UI can be beautiful and all, but if it's not relevant to me, the UI is rubbish, right? If it's not easy for me to understand what that icon is, I may never click on it, and I'll be saying, oh, this particular feature that I need, I can't find the feature, but it is there, but I do not understand the choice of analytics icon that was used. But I keep saying I want to see the analytics and the breakdown on the report of my transactions, but I can't find it because I don't know what this is. I do not understand it, right? So user research is what helps us understand the users and build great experiences for them. Finally, um, conducting user research also helps us understand the return of investment of UX design. Now, this is for us as designers and also for stakeholders. When you conduct UX research in a company or in a product company that you work in, you're able to get the stakeholders to understand the ROI of UX design. When I say ROI, I mean return on investment. Don't mind the term, it's not business, but it is literally somehow talking about the intangible benefits of investing in UX research, which is one, helps you get a deeper understanding on your users, helps you improve customer experience, increase your speed of development without slowing down to implement changes from poor UX. So what that does is you do not have to do something 5 times to get it right. You don't have to do trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. You can cut down the amount of trial and error by conducting user research, which is a lot more cheaper and increases your speed, right? So it takes time, but the speed that it gives you is better when you accumulate the amount of time it takes you to do trial and error with speed, right? So it's also a cheaper way to detect possible usability issues from the discovery stage. The discovery stage is like the early on stage from when you start designing or building the foundations for your product design, right? So these are the three primary benefits of user research. There are a lot more, but I think this kind of summarizes majorly all of the benefits of user research. I hope with these few points of mine, I've been able to convince you and not confuse you that UX research is crucial and important in our design process. And before you jump into designing pixels and breaking all of those things, you should take some time and invest into your user research. Now let's take a breather. We are again getting to the next part, which is the difference between qualitative and quantitative user research. Don't make this term scare you. I know some of us here are like new into design and getting into this field. Some already have some primary insight about it and just getting your memories freshened up. But don't get scared when you see this. It's not a big deal. It's just a very, very high quality word. Quantitative and qualitative. It's not any big deal. So basically, let me try to look for this very sweet example to break down these two things. They just mean two things, qualitative and quantitative. Looking at the term qualitative, yeah, think about when they say, what are the qualities of this person? What are the qualities of Parklands? What are the qualities of this girl? What are the qualities of this car? What are the qualities of this product? What are the quality of this thing? Qualitative, literally, it's about the qualities that makes up something, right? The quantitative is while the quantitative is about the things that are quantifiable, right? So the things that are measurable. So for us for people who grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, in Nigeria generally, you know, when you're in primary school, right? There are two primary ways that mathematics is taught when you're in the younger, let's say primary 1, primary 2, primary 3 classes. There's like there are two primary ways that you're taught how to calculate mathematics, and it's with quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning, right? So you see in that quantitative reasoning that it's always like maths, but sweet maths, where they say if 2 makes up this, how many of 2 makes up 4, or how many of 4 makes up this. So it is quantifying the things that are measurable, right? So it's not a big term. Don't make it scare you or feel like, oh, it's some kind of big UX design jargon. So coming back to what it means in our product design, quantitative and qualitative research, very simple things. Quantitative research helps you measure. Remember, quantitative research is the part of UX of user research that measures how much users do certain things, that measures the frequency of what the users do, right? So it helps you understand things about the users and things about the users' activities that are quantifiable, that are measurable. Why qualitative user research, the one that has to do with the qualities of the user, helps you understand what makes up this user. Why does this user do the things that they do in the quantitative part of your research? Let's say the quantitative research you find is that Parklands goes to school by bus every day and comes back by train every day. Parklands go to school by bus and comes back by train. So your quantitative research helps you find out that Parklands goes to school and bus 5 times or 50 times every month, right? It goes to school by bus and comes back by train. That is your quantifiable data from the research, right? It measures how many times the Parklands go to school by bus and how many times does it come back by train, right? So that is a quantifiable part of the data. Now, the qualitative research helps you understand, why do Parklands go to school by bus and comes back by train, right? That is that qualitative research helps you understand the why. Why do Parklands do the things that he do? Quantitative research helps you understand what are the things that Parklands do, or what are the things that this user do, what are the things that the user do, what are the activities of these users, what are the things that they engage in, and how much do they engage in those things. Why qualitative research helps you understand, why does this user have coconut head, why does this user do these things, why do they do this thing, do they have some kind of experience, what is their story, what is that makes this user this user, what is that special thing that makes this user different from other users of any different types of product, right? That is what qualitative research is. It is, so the one is the what and the other is the why, right? One is the quantitative research is the what are the things that Parklands do? What? There are lots of what's, and with quantitative research and with qualitative research, it is the why do this person do this thing. I think I should add this term here. Sorry, I think you can see my screen. Just do this briefly. Just so we can go back to it. This is why, and this is what. Why, what? Perfect. Now, qualitative research helps you understand why, and quantitative research helps you understand the what. What are the things that this person do? What is the frequency of these things? What does this person do every day? This person goes from point A to point B. Why does he go from? Qualitative research helps you now cross-examine your quantitative research. So, okay, this guy does this. Why does he do it? What are his pain points? What is his story? What's his motivations? What motivates faculty to go to school by bus and come back by train? And then after interviewing of doing that qualitative research, you now find out that, oh, the reason faculty go to school by, or the reason this user goes to school by bus is because on his way to school, his dad goes to work by bus and his mom goes to work by train. But when this user goes to school, his mom has the obligation to drop him off in school. His dad has the obligation to drop him off in school, and his mom has the obligation to bring him back from school. And because his dad goes to work with bus, Parklands has to go to school with bus, right? And when Parklands closes from school and returns from school, because this user or Parklands' mom has the obligation of bringing this child back from school, the user then goes back home by train because his mom has the obligation to take him back home, and his mom goes to work and back from work on train, right? So you're saying that now we're understanding the wider activity occurred, but the other research helps us understand what are the things this person do, how does he go to school, and what are the frequency of how he goes to school. You get? I don't want to flog the explanation so much, but then just if at any point you get confused, just think in your mind that, oh, one part of this research will help us understand what this user does, and the other one helps us understand why the user do what they do. Point blank simple. So here I talk about how quantitative research helps us measure user behavior that can be quantified, such as statistics and numbers. So it gives you a numerical value of what you're researching. How many times does he go to school? 50 times. Oh, he goes to school by bus and comes back by train 20 times. Or he goes every day, 2 months. Numbers, quantifiable statistics and metrics, right? But qualitative research, which is in green, helps us understand, because it deals with the words or the descriptive elements like feelings that can be observed but not measured. They're not measurable, but they can be. They're like the emotion that the parts that this part is very important, because this is the part of your research that sparks your empathy as a designer. The qualitative research is that part that helps you feel the shoes of the user and begin to build empathy for them, which now drives you to be motivated to design in such a way that you want to help this user feel relieved from the pain that they are going through, right? Here, I then added like short descriptions of what each of this research means, but I've given you the bottom line explanation. Quantitative research helps you understand the what, and qualitative research helps you understand the why. Now, quantitative research researchers use quantitative research to test and confirm assumptions and theories with the goal to establish like some kind of facts, right? So usually before you begin your research, it is very likely that you would have certain hypotheses for what should be or what the users are. For example, you're building a product for a product company, yeah, and that product company already have some hypothesis of who they believe their users are, right? So the product is solving a problem. The co-founders of the product already have some kind of hypothesis of who they believe are the right users of this product. Now, user research helps you validate that hypothesis, that claim. From your user research, you can now confirm if, oh, truly who you say the user audience are the right user audience for the brand, or you can identify that there was an error with who the user audience are, and there's even maybe an opportunity for a different user demographic that might have not been highlighted from the early on, right? And some common techniques for this quantitative research are like surveys, closed-ended questions, experiments, graphs, and tables, but primarily surveys. Surveys are, you know what surveys are? They help you, is how you ask certain closed-ended questions and people can give you responses to them. Do I have an example? Do I have an example to show to you? I think I do. Forms.google. Yes. So this is an example of a survey for quantitative research. So I created this survey to get metrics and data for the 5 ways to mental well-being in the UK. And you see the questions that I asked. You see that quantifiable questions. For example, I asked, okay, could you confirm your age range, so that at the end of the day, if 50 people or 30 people respond to my data, I would have some kind of quantifiable data that says 18 amongst the 30 people that responded to this data, 20% of them are within the range of 18 to 24. Are you seeing how that data becomes quantifiable? And surveys are like just the metrics and the tools that helps us achieve quantifiable quantitative research, right? So you see all the questions are closed-ended questions. A good example, for example, is this. So you see here, I asked, which of these best describe how frequently you engage with physical activities, right? And then the responses are at least once a week, at least once every 2 weeks, at least once a month, at least whatever it is, is select here, right? At the end of the day, I can now say, oh, 10% of the users that responded to this engage in physical activity once a week. 25% of them never attend to it. So and so percent of them never attends to it. A good example, you see, when I click on the responses, Google Forms give me like a summarized version of my data. So you're already seeing proof of your quantifiable data and metrics. I can say, oh, 60% of my users are within the age of 25 to 30 years old, right? So this is already giving me quantifiable data about the user that I can use. I can boldly then say, oh, most of our users are between the age of 25 to 30, and I'll be correct. That is factual. It's data, and I have data to back it up, right? This is an example of quantitative research. It gives you insights that are quantifiable. So you see this on how often do you connect and spend time with other people? I can say boldly, 75% of my users spend time with other people at least once a week, right? And the other 25% are across the different other spectrums. So you see, this is a good example of quantitative research, and a technique for this is survey. And you can use that several tools that can be used for surveys. And one of them is called Google Forms. There are a lot. There's SurveyMonkey, Typeform, a lot. So you can do your research to find out more. So there's SurveyMonkey, Typeform, and things like that. Back to our presentation. Then qualitative research. Qualitative research focuses on collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data such as emotion, behavior, opinion, or feeling that cannot be represented in a numerical format. Right? So it is this part, you see everything that is here. It helps you interpret data such as emotion, the emotions and behavior and opinions and the feelings about your users. All of these things is how you now begin to build empathy for this user. You're moved by their story, you're moved by the pain that they have to go through at different stages of their product experience. So user research techniques and methods, I've already touched a bit of them just while we are discussing, but I would just share briefly the types of research techniques that we have. But while conducting this research, right, both of those research techniques that I shared with you are important. Those two types of research. Before I even go into the metrics and before I go into the techniques, right, when you're conducting user research, it is important that you conduct both quantitative and qualitative research. You do not have to pick one or the other, right? What you have to pick one of the other is with the techniques that you use in both of them. Both of them are important because one helps you understand what your user does, and the other one helps you understand why they do what they do. So you cannot have one without the other. You have to do both of them, quantitative and qualitative research. And yes, so that being said, that's what I wanted to drop down here. But now we have, since you have to do both of them, deciding what techniques, there are different techniques for qualitative and quantitative research, but deciding what technique or the right techniques that you should use when you're conducting either quantitative or qualitative research depends a lot on what you want to research, right? And the what you hope to achieve from that kind of research, right? It helps you pick the right, if you use the right techniques, it helps you understand that in itself can impact what your result is, right? So you do not, there are different type of techniques, and you can pick and choose which one to use based on the one that is right for your particular circumstance. Now, for qualitative research, these are common techniques and methods that are used for its quality. Remember, qualitative research is that one that helps us understand why the user do certain things or do what they do. And I've shared four common techniques that you will find, but there are a lot more techniques. There are a lot more, and you can do your personal research and uncover those ones. But primarily, these are the most common ones that I've found and I've used personally. One of which is user interviews. So you say I gave some kind of description that talks about what these types of research techniques are. So for interviews, they are structured in they are they can be structured, they can be semi-structured, they cannot even have any structure at all. They can be formal and informal. But the goal is that you are able to sit down with the user either remotely or in person or over Zoom, and you get to ask them questions, open-ended questions, in quotes, open-ended questions that helps you understand why they do certain things. And remember, when I say open-ended questions, it's a conscious thing. So open-ended questions are different from closed-ended questions, and and for qualitative research, open-ended questions are important. You should never use closed-ended questions in qualitative research, but you can use closed-ended questions in quantitative research. And the reason is that open-ended questions are questions that do not have a yes or no answer. Like if I ask you, are you a man? And you say yes, that's a closed-ended question because you have just two options. You have limited options. You may have more than two options, but your options are limited, right? You either say yes or you say no. You either say man, woman, heterosexual, different orientations, right? But open-ended questions are questions that allows you to explain, that allows the users to explain. So, and those kind of questions begin with talk to me about a time where you encountered certain things and these things. So for example, imagine the analogy we gave for how a user goes to school by bus and comes back by train. an example of the qualitative, and that's the quantitative research, and we found out that the chooser goes to school by bus and comes back by train. Now, we want to conduct qualitative research to understand why the chooser goes to school by bus and comes back by train, right? So my question to that user would not be a close-ended question. It will be structured something like this. Hello, could you talk to me about the last time you went to school and came back, right? Talk to me about the decisions for, so it'll be about, it is always like questions that encourages the user to explain and give you a description of what their experience had been, and not questions that it can just answer, oh, who takes you to school? My mom or my dad. It'll be like, there's always going to be a why. Talk to me about why you do certain things. Why do you do this? So and so and so. So there's always a why and a prompt to get them to explain why they do certain things that they do. So open-ended and closed-ended questions are like a bigger subject, because the user interviews on itself is like a deeper subject. I wish I can share an example. After the presentation, I'll look for an example. I think I have one somewhere. So focus groups are like a type of user research that involves like multiple participants, where you have like a small group of people discuss an issue and you try to brainstorm. It's like brainstorming sessions with small groups of people, understanding and discussing certain things and finding out details about those things. It's very, very popular in like workspaces and workplaces, where you're trying to understand, when you're brainstorming about a particular subject matter. Postcards are like small skills written questions that ask, for example, 3 or 4 focus questions for participants, but allow them space to write their own words. So you ask questions in like small postcards and give to them to write in their own words what they believe certain things should be, or what it is and what not. But observations are usually like on site, like physical lab, UX laboratory, where the conditions are more relaxed and the participants are asked to use a particular product the way they would use them, but the situation is a lot more controlled and well documented. Basically. And then for quantitative research, there are 2 primary versions. Like the most popular technique for quantitative research is surveys, right? There are a lot more. I want you guys to research that in your own time, but this survey is like the most primary technique. It literally can work for almost every use case for why you may need to do a quantitative research. So surveys, I gave an example of what a survey looks like here. I believe this was created with Typeform. So you can see an example of a survey. I'm sure some of us have experienced surveys, but this is how an example of it looks. Where you asked a close-ended question and give the user a limited list of responses that are fixed. You've already decided the response for the user. You just need to ask them to pick which one closely aligns with them. And they can either pick one, A, B, C, or D. At the end of the day, you can have a quantifiable data that says a percentage of people picked A, percentage of people picked B. Observations can involve like even in user interviews, right? They can be intertwined. Sometimes you can observe how frequently a user does certain things. If you are in a closed space, you can observe how many times they struggle with clicking a particular button, how many times they try before they successfully complete a task, right? You can observe and have quantifiable data of things like that. But there are a lot more, right? And you can find out more by just doing a Google search and searching for quantitative research techniques. And I can just give an example: quantitative research methods. So I'll leave you guys to do your research and learn more about all of these things, because primarily one of the most important things in this types of in your career as a UX designer is that you marry the act of doing research. Research is going to be your bread and butter, right? So, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. Google search everything that troubles you and do research to gain clarity. Always seek clarity, right? So I'm encouraging you to do more research and understand more different types of techniques. And if there are anything that are confusing, you can reach out back and we can talk about it. So without further ado, this brings my lecture around quantitative research, user research, and the techniques and methods of this user research to a close. My name is Parklins. Ifeanyi Chukwu. Thank you guys for listening. If there are any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask while I look for an example of the user interview that I did, so I can share with you guys what that looks like. Ezra. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have some questions here. Just one question, but I think before the section ends, maybe I will ask one or two again. Is survey same as interview? I don't know. Is survey same as interview?
No, it's not.
Okay. So the one you showed us about the mental well-being is that survey?
Yes,
survey?
yeah.
So I don't know. Basically, I don't really know how you can explain the interview part of it relating to the survey. Maybe is it that you do survey first before the interview, or you do the interview after this before the survey?
You can do one before the other. You can either do the survey before the user interview, or you can do the user interview before the survey. You can do either before either of them, and whichever one you do first kind of help you influence the kind of questions you ask in the other one. So if you do qualitative research first, your quantitative research would be your quantitative research will be similar, could be similar questions, but are closed-ended versions of those questions. So sometimes the questions are similar between surveys and user interviews, right? But the context of the questions or the structure of the questions are different. With user interview, the questions are always supposed to be open-ended questions, and for surveys, the questions should be closed-ended questions, because even by the nature of the survey, people do not have time to sit. As in, for surveys, you will not, because it's unmoderated, you will not be there to encourage people to spend 1 hour or 30 minutes filling out your survey form. So your survey form is supposed to be something that people can complete in just 5 minutes of their time, that they can complete very briefly, which is why it's important to create questions on behalf of them in survey that they can just select which one aligns best with them. That way they can complete your survey in 5 minutes. But with user interviews, those interviews are planned ahead. There's no way you can just stumble upon somebody right now and interview them immediately. It will be, even if you do, some kind of time and attention will be given to you and will be planned ahead, so that, which gives you more, and it's moderated, right? So you have control to encourage the user to speak and encourage them to go through all the questions that you may need them to answer. Do you get? So to answer your question, survey is not the same thing as interview. User interview is when you sit down with the user and ask them the question, either physically face to face or on Zoom, um, or on Zoom, or online, or remotely. So I found an example of what an open-ended question is. I will share my screen again so I can share with us the difference. So For quantitative research, survey is one of the most common methods and techniques necessary for conducting this type of research. And you can see an example of it. They're like close-ended questions. The questions already have answers. All you need to do is just select which answer most align with you. That's literally how it is. And for user interviews, this is an example of a user interview script. I can share this with us, and you see that it is a conversation. It is planned. So it is, there's an introductory greeting, and I give some kind of context for what this interview is about. Asked about confirming their age, the area they live in. These are just pre-questions. But now, primary questions. You see an example of an open-ended question is this. See, could you please talk me through your last interaction with your bank? Now, this particular user interview was for a fintech app that I worked on, was to understand um, why certain users choose certain features in an app, in a bank app, and what they prefer, things like that. So you see the open-ended question the questions are questions that invite the user to have a conversation and share with you what their challenges are and anything. So you see these questions focus mainly about helping you identify the pain points of the user and the highlights, the delights of the users, and their story, what makes them excited about the product, what makes them angry with the product, basically their story and why certain things appeal or do not appeal to them. So see this question says, um, so now this particular question here is a wrong example for an open-ended question because it starts with a what. Not just that it starts with a what, but it is a close-ended question. Starting with a what makes it closes down the ability for the user to explain. So this is, what are your preferred ways of working and communicating with your bank? This is a question that is more suitable for a survey, because when I've asked this question, I can now put visit physical branch, phone calls, or internet banking, or social media chats. Like, these are the ways you prefer communicating with your bank, and the user can pick one, either phone call or visiting the bank physically. This is not a question I should be asking, because after the user will just give a one-word answer or a two-word answer, but then I would not understand the context for why the user prefers. So in this question now, for this question to be a closed-ended question and be a question that is good for that is ideal for a user interview, what this question would be a why, right? Talk to me about why uh, about your preferred way of communicating with your bank, right? So this says, what are your preferred ways of talking to your bank? Is it that, oh, I visit the branch to talk to them, or I talk to them on the phone straight up? So talk to me about why you prefer how do I switch? Talk to me about why you prefer. Talk to me about your preferred ways. Talk to me about right. This is not a perfect example, but you see the slight difference between this question and this question. One is a closed-ended question and just urges for like a very fixed answer. Oh, what are your preferred ways of communicating with your bank? I call my bank on the phone. I call my bank on this, and my response is finished. When I say, talk to me about your preferred ways of communicating with your bank, you'll be, oh, I prefer calling my bank on the phone. I prefer calling my bank on the phone because I don't even have time. I do not have time to go to the bank. I'm a very busy man. So I prefer calling them on the phone because every time I go to the bank, there's always queue and I can't be in the queue. I don't have the time to be in the queue. I hate going to banks. So I prefer calling them on the phone because that way I'm able to call them on the phone and multitask with other things in my office. I can't. And again, most of the banks that I know are far from my office. Instead of me entering like 1 hour bus to the bank and spend 2 hours in the queue, I rather talk to them on the phone. So my preferred way of talking to the bank is through the phone, and I prefer it so much because I do not have time. Now you see this response that I just gave helps you figure out a lot of things. So it tells you what my preferred ways of communicating with my bank is, and why that way is the preferred way, and why the alternatives do not align to me, and why they do not align to me because I'm a busy person and I do not have the time to go to the bank, and plus I hate going to the banks. Why do I hate going to the banks? Because the queues are always very long and it's difficult to get them to do what I want to do in time. So I prefer calling them on the phone because I do not have time to go to the bank. I see this invites me to share my pain points, and I will just keep talking and talking and talking, share my frustrations. I'm like, but this other one, just what is your social? So it does not give me room to share my frustrations and why I do not like certain things and why I like certain things. Do you get? I hope this gives a good example. But I see closed-ended questions are just closed. I hope this does give a good example. So yes, there is Ezra, was I able to answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, but currently we kind of Web3 project, so must not carry qualitative and quantitative research in Web3 project, something like that.
Yes, quantitative and
Happening?
qualitative
Can you hear
research.
me?
I can hear you. Yes,
On Web3
quantitative and
project.
qualitative.
Yes.
Yes, you need to carry both. You need to conduct both quantitative and qualitative research, because it's not enough to know what people do. It's also important to know why they do what they do. So, yes, it is important to carry out both quantitative and qualitative research. I would have to go down to Olaoni. Olaoni, hi.
Yeah, hi. Ezra already asked the question I wanted to ask.
Oh, okay,
Thank
okay. You're welcome. I'm not sure I can see everyone. Oh, anyone else with a question? Oyindamola,
Yeah, good morning.
good
My
morning.
question is, as regards the survey, for instance, now, when you
Yeah,
ask question for surveys, how do you ensure that your questions are inclusive? Because when you are sending out surveys, questionnaires, for instance, for
yeah,
people, you can't, first of all, determine their age. So if you send that questionnaire where you start from 18 to 24 and the person's age is not there, maybe the person is 17 or 16, it's already a blocker because the person can't go ahead with that survey, for instance.
yeah.
So how do we ensure that it's inclusive? Because obviously we cannot be asking our users their age or their gender, because even for gender, for instance, now we know the world is changing. There are people that when you
Okay.
write male and female,
I think
or
I
and
get
you
your
don't
question.
write, what did you say?
I think I get your question.
Yes. So also, I wanted to ask about the what's the second one? The interviews.
Yeah.
So for interviews, are your questions like you? I know you write down the questions, but while in the process of interviews, there are some other questions that come up. Like, oh, when the person raises, you just want to ask a particular question, but the person raises another what do you call it now? Like a very important thing to note. Do you go for that? Does that not kind of like distract you from the main questions that you want to ask? How do you deal with that?
Okay. So first, let me try to address the part with making sure things are inclusive. So you see, with the age, for example, it is there are ways with how we can make sure certain things are inclusive. So in this case, if, for example, and this can be used, not everything can be totally inclusive based on what the purpose of it is. So if for this particular survey I do not want to cater to people that are below 18. When they come to this form and they did not see their age, they wouldn't even fill the form, right? It is a way to cut down on those people because they're not like the primary people that I want to speak to or reach out to them. But if they are, so you see that on this list, they are not that I do not cater for people who are like 17 to 0 years old, but I cater for people that are 55 and above. And you see the way I did that is by adding 55 plus, right? So if I wanted to cater to people that are that are that are younger than 17, I would just basically add I could add below 17, right? Or I can add 17 minus, which you get. That the ways of making sure it's included is just by adding either a plus or adding a like the way you can do that is with words, and basically, and you and it is, unless of course it is very important, right? So you see some other responses here, but there always have to be some kind of peg with how much you can go. Like you may have to summarize certain things in certain ways, but some you may not have some limitations, or some responses to certain things are fixed. For example, with gender, there's male, female, and there are different other pronouns like she, they, and the rest of them, right? So all of those other, you see that they are not, it is not infinity. You can cater for all the other use cases or all the other options, and they can just be like a list of 7 or a list of 5. But in cases where they're like 10 or 20 or 100, or they're a lot more, and the rest, and you can group them into certain things, you can, if that works for the context, you can. For example, if you're filling a form, for example, there can be a case where I want you to select a particular country that you're from, right? So if I needed to select a particular country, even if we have 200 countries in the world or 150 countries in the world, I would list out all the countries. It will be a drop down so you can select your actual country, right? But there's also a use case where I wouldn't want you to select a country. I can group my list into continents like Africa, Europe, America, Asia, right? And Middle East. And then when you select Africa, I know that everyone in Africa is catered for in that my list. Similar to how I know everyone from the age of 55 till 100 or 200 million or 1,000 years old is catered for in my 55 plus. You get? So there are different ways. It's flexible. It's not cast by stone for that you must include everything includable. It is within context. Things with gender now, yes, you can. It is good to do that if it's relevant to what you want to do, and the responses. So the relevance is what's important, and that gives context for how you include certain things. But yeah, even in this case, I try to cover for people who do not do it at all. So they don't do it never. But still, you see that even in this time frame, I need to engage with physical. Right, even with this time frame, right, there's like almost an endless possible amount of durations that I could possibly list out here, right? But these are the durations that I want to get insight about. Do you get? So I am deciding what I want to learn about. I'm deciding for the user, and I'm placing them somewhere. If they do not fall between this category, I'm placing a category for them to fall. And if they don't fall in either of these, do you get? So for example, I can ask for a frequency of once a week, a frequency of twice a week. A question, this says at least once a week. There's at least twice a week. It could at least 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and 100 times a week, up until 1,000 times a week. And then, but after we move from a week, you can now say, okay, once in 2 weeks, once in 3 weeks, 50 times in 3 weeks, 1,000 times in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks. And then you can say it's endless, right? I can even then say, okay, once per week, once a month, once every 4 weeks, once every 6 weeks. So you are the one that then determine what is valuable to you and what context that drives you to then decide how you limit and include the certain things that you want, right? So see, now I'm catering for just per week and then a month. So I'm saying, okay, do you fall once a week, 2 times a week, at least 2 times a week? So because I'm saying 2 times a week, I know there can be room for 3 times a week. There can be room for 4 times a week. There can be room for at least once every 3 weeks and at least once every 4 weeks. But I do not cater for at least 3 weeks, which is why I use the word at least, so that even though you do 3 weeks, you would most likely fall on 2 weeks or a month, because there's, in the process of trying to include, you may end up in a situation where you have an endless list of possible inclusions. I hope that answers the question. I would ask you again, but moving down to the, did it?
I said yes, yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Moving down to the interview. I think you asked for, if the user asks a question if the user responds to something while you're asking them something, do you cut them or do you encourage them, even if it is not primary or focused on what you're talking about? If what the user is responding to is totally and completely off subject, you shouldn't even, like, the goal isn't to shut them down. The goal is to, remember, in user interviews, right, your goal is to invite them to talk. And your job as the UX researcher is to observe from all the jargon that they're saying, what are the things that make sense? How can you, because sometimes people say what they mean, or they don't even know what they say that they mean. They just say it and then they mean something else and they don't mean something else, right? So there are different ways for how you can tackle that situation. If they are, you can, for example, you ask that, if you ask a user a question, let's say, oh, could you talk to me about your preferred ways of communicating with your bank, right? And the user begins to go off topic, or the user responds. And there are ways where you can, let's say the user just says something very little, and if you see that the user begins to talk about something passionately, you can encourage them and be like, oh, why? You can ask questions like why, how, who, not who is like a close-ended question, but why, how. You can encourage them with small talks. I'm looking for a perfect user interview script that I created, where I catered not just for the actual questions, but I added why and how as a way for me to remind myself that when I'm asking this user and I feel like there's an interesting opportunity for what I can get more information about, I'll just ask them, okay, why did you do certain thing? Oh, what? In that same question, there will now be a why and a how, besides just the questions that I asked them, right? But if they're going off topic, what's important is to observe, listen to them, and ask them why they responded, why they gave that response to the question you ask, so that you can try to find the relevance, right? But if it's not relevant, it's okay to move on to the next question. Be like, you can control the time and be like, oh, okay. Like, communicate and give them a gesture of let them feel the gesture that you're following and you're together with them, right? But you can also take control of the situation and ensure that you are managing the time and managing the context as which they are speaking. But the goal is to encourage them to speak. Even if they go outside point, let them, and then, but also try to redirect or remap whatever thing that they might have said that you think is irrelevant to what you had asked them, and try to find some kind of relationship. So if you just ask them, oh, why did you say this and that, and person be like, oh, to the question that I asked, and person be like, oh, the reason I said this is because of this. I know this doesn't seem like it makes sense, but it's because this, I've experienced this personally. I've had this personal experience where this was like this, and then you may not know that maybe that might even be some room to identify a unique opportunity where they have a personal experience with a particular banker or a particular way of life in certain things that to them is relevant doesn't necessarily mean it's relevant to other people, other users, because those are those areas that makes them unique from another user, because they have different personal experiences. Does that answer your question? Felt rough, but
Yeah, sure.
okay. I think we've got Sam.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning, Sam.
Yeah. I want to find out. So, at the end of the quantitative or qualitative, the output, what do you take back with you? You know, at the end of the day, you have a better understanding of the user. You understand their emotions, their behaviors, their opinions. Is it an empathy map that we take back with us, or no? Just explain anyway, because I think I
Okay.
have an idea. I'd love to hear your explanation.
At the end of a qualitative research, so in the process of the qualitative research, right, it is important to document that process. And for user interviews, even in the opening statement when you're talking about the interview, there's going to be it is an opportunity for you to ask permission of the user to record or document that process. You can ask for permission to record or screen record or record the conversation that you're having or voice record the conversation that you're having. And if they say yes, you can move on. And if they say no, you can document by writing. Right. So at the end of the day, you are going to work out of that user interview with data and insight about this user. Right. Now that user and that data that you work out with is still raw data and insight about certain things. It is not in that call or in that interview that you begin to draw an empathy map. No, that interview is for you to observe what they say, observe their emotions when they say certain things. Do their emotions change when they talk about a particular subject? Because they will not tell you that I feel sad now when they're talking about a particular thing, right? Your entire focus and attention during the interview is not to create any UX artifacts like empathy map or things like that. It is to observe every little detail that the user do during that period. Did their countenance change when they're talking about certain things? How do they react when you talk to them to expand about certain things? Do they feel? Did they go back into their shell when they're talking about certain things? How do they feel? How do they behave? You're observing their behavior as you're asking them questions, right? So in the user interview, your focus should be observing the user and asking them the question, engaging them in the conversation, right? After the interview, you work out with data and insight about this user. And after that, you're given after working out with the data, you have an opportunity to the next steps from that is to break down that data into granular detail and begin to find discrepancies and things that are similarities and group them together. You begin to break down and make sense of that data. And that process is called affinity mapping, right? That helps you it is a process where you break down the data you get from your user interview into granular detail and find discrepancies and group different words and meanings to things that are relatable and find discrepancies from those things, right? At the end of the day, you now begin to have um you now begin to have data that you can use to now make up your empathy map and every other UX artifacts that come by. But the major thing you work out from an interview with is data and insight about that user. After that interview, the next thing is to break down the data that you've gotten and make sense of the data. That's when that data you can now create not just affinity map, that you now begin to create UX artifacts like empathy map, user persona. Because if you're creating a user persona and you need to fill out what the pain points of the users are, you can go back to the data you have and identify, oh, these are the pain points. So you can listen to the recording and be noting down the pain points. Okay, pain points, this. Observe anywhere where the user said, oh, I hate going to the bank. There's always a lot of queue. You note it down. Pain points, hates going to the bank. There's a lot of queue in the bank. It's very busy. And when you you talk about and the motivation area, you break down the data into those different segments. Oh, motivations. Oh, I'm a very busy man. I do not have enough time. There's a lot of traffic to go to the work. So the motivations for why I don't like going to the bank is because I'm a very busy person. I don't have time to go to the bank. What are the pain points for going to the bank? There's always queue in the bank and things like that, right? Those are the pain points, and it takes a long time to get to the bank. There's no close bank within my region. So you see how I'm breaking that data that I've gotten from my interview with the user into those different segments to build up UX artifacts. UX artifacts are like UX materials like empathy maps and user personas. Did I answer your question, Sam?
Yes, did. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think
Okay, sir.
we've got Yusuf. Oh, I think I'm seeing Yusuf.
Good morning.
Good morning, Yusuf.
Yeah, my question is about research participants and who you will survey and the characteristics that the participants have to have. Like let's say you are working on a fintech project now or an e-commerce project now. How do you kind of like tally out the research participants, whether you're sending out a survey or you're going to be doing in-person interviews? Like, do you just kind of call anybody you see, or you kind of, how do you like work around that process?
Okay. So when you deciding what participants you engage usually determines, or is usually determined rather by the um is determined by the, what's the word? Is it some when you're starting a particular product, there are like hypotheses already exist about who your users are, and sometimes the project, the insight about what the project or the product is about helps you know what kind of users are likely to are going to be relevant for this particular course, right? So what that means is when you now want to now build up, okay, create a list of users that you should interview and decide who you should interview or who you should send the survey to, that is where you now need to do like something called primary research, which is your personal research. Like let's say what I'm creating a product for an e-commerce project, right? And it is okay, let me give an example for a product that I did. I was building a mobile app for charity volunteers, right? Those are my users, people who volunteer to charity works and things like that. Those were my primary users, and that was all I know, that my users are charity volunteers, right? So what I did was I need to now figure out how can I find these charity volunteers, who are they, and how can I find them? Where do they spend a lot of their time in? Right? Deciding who to interview comes from the context of what you're building, right? If I'm building a mobile app for kids to play games, it gives me a good sense of who my users are, their kids, right? So when I now begin to ask myself, okay, where can I find children that play games? Schools. I can go to primary schools and speak to the principal and ask to do some kind of survey to the students and get understanding for what the kind of cartoons that these children like, right? So if I'm for charity volunteers, what I did was I looked for how can I find these charity volunteers? Where do they exist? And I did some primary research and I found that they have communities on Facebook. I reached out to a charity volunteer group on Facebook and I joined the group, and then I recruited participants from there. And then I did some research and found some organizations that are communities where you can volunteer for charity works and things like that. And I reached out to them and I found their pool of charity volunteers and recruited participants from them. So understanding who your users, deciding who the users are to recruit comes from the brief of the product. Which is the hypothesis. That hypothesis first of who your users are and what they are about. And you can use that as a touch base to conduct your research to decide who you should recruit. But how you find them after you've decided who you should recruit, you need to now figure out how would you find them. Do you find them online? Do you find them in physical places? Like for example, with schools, you can go to a physical primary school and interview and meet with the principal and ask permission to interview the primary school students, or you can join, look for online communities where these people spend their time and then find them there and recruit them to your course. That is how I believe that is how it should be. Did I answer your question, Yusuf?
Yeah, you did, but sometimes like to get to interview some users, like they will actually have to have like a kind of why they should like agree to your interview. Like, what is the
Yeah.
point? Yeah.
Sometimes you can incentivize them. You can offer what's the word, incentives, right, for participating. It could be, oh, for products, for example, if you participate in our user research, we could give you early access to the product when the product is launched, or we can give you 20% discount when you sign up, or we can give you an Amazon voucher or things like that. If it's like a non-profit product that you're building and it's for the betterment of that product, you can incentivize them with sharing with them what the vision is and letting them feel like they'll be contributing to the success of that thing. If it's a personal research product for your school dissertation project or personal research, it would be you telling them, oh, this is a project for school and I would need it to excel in a particular thing. You can appeal to the emotional part and then get them to listen. There are incentives that you can use to get people to interview. Sometimes you do not necessarily have to find those incentives. If you already work in a product company, you didn't have to worry about how to incentivize them. The company most likely sometimes already have existing users and can tap from that user base by offering, oh, discounts on their subscription model, or 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 gift cards and things like that. You get, but incentives are a way to convince people. It could be paid, it could be paid incentives, cash incentive, or just an act of good gesture. Which is why if you go to a community, for example, of the particular target audience and say, and join the community, so long it is valuable to them, and you join the community and say, oh, hello guys, my name is this. I'm building an app that would help you guys become better in or find jobs and so on and so on and so on. So, and I need your help for how I might go around this, right? And in that process, you literally wouldn't even need to pay anybody any money to conduct it. You can say, oh, an incentive for completing this task, I'm giving out I'm going to give you early access to the app when the app is ready, or give you um £5 Amazon gift card. That's if you have the money. If you don't have the money, you don't necessarily have to tell them you give them anything. You can throw the net open and you'll find people that would interview with, that would participate in your process. Hope that helps, Yusuf.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think we've got Bello.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Hi, Bello. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Please
So I
call
just
me.
want to ask a quick question. So
Sorry.
you said that you can conduct qualitative before quantitative. Well, I'm
Yeah.
like kind of thinking, how do you get, through quantitative, you can get people that are ready to take part in the qualitative aspect. So I'm thinking that quantitative should come all the time before qualitative, because you can ask people if they are interested in deep interview or more interview about this particular product. They should drop their contact or any other stuff you can reach out to them with. So I don't know.
Okay, so my response is, which is why I said one can come over the other. There's no reason for why one must come before another one. Because in fact, all of the UX process, right, is not even cast in stone. It is just a recommended flow for how things might go, so that you have some kind of rhythmed methodology, right? But in reality, when you get involved in like a real work experience, you're at liberty to skip some process and focus on certain processes that are relevant to you. Now you see, for example, now we're saying that the right process is to do your research, then design and get to work, right? But funny enough, during my time at data camp, right, there's almost, depending again on the context for what you're doing, if you're working on like growth products, for example, there'll be no time to, there may not be enough time to for the company to invest into doing research, doing all the research before you design. You may actually have to do it the opposite way, which is design first and then test, take it to markets, test it there, let people use the product and tell us we do not like A, we do not like this, right? Because then you then have something that people can give feedback on. So in some companies, you design first and then do user testing later and then get research after you've already designed. Not doing research, spending months and resources doing research before you now start designing. So it has a way of balancing speed and quality. You get, so none of them are cast in stones. They're just ideal. If you have an opportunity to do quantitative research before qualitative research, please do it. If you have a better opportunity to do the quantitative research before the other, please do it. And whichever one you do first would then influence the certain kind of questions that you would ask in the other one. But the only difference is they are literally going to be the same questions. You will just be, one will be closed-ended questions, the other will be open-ended questions. The context of the questions you're asking them is the same questions for qualitative and quantitative research. It is just the technique of how the question is structured. One is open-ended, one is closed-ended. And I gave an example for how I showed you two the same questions, right? But I tweaked them in such a way that one was qualitative and the other one was quantitative. So they're the same questions, literally, but they encourage different actions from the user. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. I'm trying to look to see if there's any other person. Ezra, do you still have a question? I see your hand is up. Okay, are there questions in the charts? So I think someone is. Let me check the charts just to be sure. Children would come at the end of the class. How can we find them? Let's people to recruit users. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I know this particular one is more like part of the today class, but I just want to like understand it more, like journey map, user journey map. I don't know, like how user journey map is, because most of the diagram I've been seeing, I'm trying to like understand the whole concept around it. Some I'll see emoji of some happy emoji, sad emoji, angry emoji, something like that, with up and down sketch, stuff like that. So I want to understand what is user journey all about, user journey map all about.
I think there is a class for this. I would like to respond to that, but I think there's already some kind of an entire class attributed to that question. So if you've not already done it, I believe there should be. It's part of our curriculum. So, but for this particular lecture is focused on user research and techniques. Check it.
Okay, so
Don't worry,
thank you.
we'll get to that part. But you're taking it in steps because now you see we're moving into the discovery phase for how we are doing research, and then we'll then gradually get to the point where we now begin to talk about what you do with the user data that you've gathered. When you've gathered the user data, user journey map will be part of the UX artifacts that you're going to come up with. And so it is not a one word conversation. It is like an entire list of conversation you get. So I cannot just give you just one definition and it makes sense. I would have to begin to explain, such as how I've explained with qualitative research, and that's like an entire class. But just keep that in mind. If there is none, I'll respond to it, like even if it's personally to a chat. And if there's none, I'll make sure it's included to our curriculum. I know it is included. I'm not just sure we've gotten to that part yet.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. If there's nothing else, thank you guys for sticking till the end. You can connect with me. My name is the same everywhere. It's Parklins. On Twitter, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and ask direct questions, or mostly Twitter. Just tweet at me. I know my social media has been a mess lately, but yeah, these are the places that you can find me. But mostly on Slack, I'm on the design power channel. And I'm not the best there as well. But anyways, thank you guys for being here with me up from the beginning till the end. Until next time, have an amazing study. And please do personal research. Research everything that I've said to you. I'm going to share a copy of this document with us so we can go through it and remember all of the things that I've said. But also everything that I've asked on your own, go on Google and search for qualitative research and quantitative research and try to make sense of it for yourself personally. That's a good practice as a designer. All right, without further ado, have an amazing weekend and bye-bye.